Okay, to start now. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to all of you to another meeting of the Partnership and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee this afternoon, the Tuesday, the 9th of November 2021. And it's depressing afternoon weather-wise here in Anglesey, but there's a warm welcome, of course, for you all elected members, officers and invitees, without forgetting, of course, those who have joined us on the live stream this afternoon. So we'll begin the meeting with the declarations as usual. I'd like to remind everyone who's in attendance in this meeting that the meeting is held virtually and will be live streamed on YouTube and will be available to be watched again. You are asked to put your mobile phones off and to put yourselves on mute, please, unless you are contributing to the meeting, as the meeting is being recorded. You're also asked to raise your virtual hand if you wish to speak or ask a question, and then to put your hand down once you've contributed, please. Okay, can we have the apologies first of all then? Are there any apologies? I've got one from Mr. Keith Roberts, who's a co-opted member. Any other apologies? We'll go through the register then. So to begin with, David Roberts, Councillor David Roberts. Yes, I'm here. If I could find the mute button, I'm here. Councillor Trevor Lloyd-Hughes, here. Councillor Vaughan Hughes, in attendance. Good afternoon, everyone. Councillor Alan Roberts. Good afternoon, everyone. Councillor Margaret Roberts. Good afternoon. Councillor Nicola Roberts. Councillor Ken Hughes. Good afternoon, everyone. Councillor Robert Llewellyn-Jones. Good afternoon. Councillor Glyn Haynes.
I
hope I've included all the elected members that are members of the committee. Now, I'm not sure if there are any co-opted members with us. I'll go through the names. Mrs. Annes Fraser. Mr. David Wynne-Jones. Mrs. Theo Johnson. There is an apology, as I said, from Mr. Keith Roberts. And then co-opted members, Mr. David Griffith of Menter Môn. Okay, so thank you. We'll go on therefore to the declarations of interest. So to receive any declaration of interest by any member or officer in respect of any item of business. Are there any declarations of interest? Okay. So we'll go on then to the minutes. To submit for confirmation the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of September 2021. Anyone willing to propose those, please? Councillor Alan Roberts proposes, and seconded by Councillor Ken Hughes. Are we all in agreement? Yes, if you can raise your hands, thank you. Okay, there are two areas which we wish to scrutinise this afternoon, which are the Welsh language to begin with, and then the Joint Local Development Plan. Now, are there elected members who are portfolio holders in attendance? You can see them. Hi, William, I'm here. Councillor Ian Williams is in attendance. And I'm also here. Councillor Marion Jones is in attendance as well. And David Thomas is in the background as well. Welcome. Okay, excellent. So we'll go to the first item this afternoon, which is the Welsh language, the language strategy 2021 to 2026. Now then, the purpose of the strategy, of course, is to outline how Anglesey Council will promote the Welsh language and facilitate the use of the language in a wider context on the island. So there are two sections to this report. We have a assessment report, which is, I would say, a historical element, taking us from 2016 up to 2021. And then we have the promotion strategy 2021 to 2026. Now I see Councillor Ian Williams is in attendance with us, and he is the portfolio holder for apologies, there is someone who hasn't gone on mute. If you could put your... Thank you, David. Can I call, therefore, Councillor Ian Williams to present this item, please? Thank you, Gwilym. You've begun, as you said. There are two reports here. The assessment report, which is looking back on the progress made on the first strategy, and there is an annual assessment each year, and the 5 years are included in that report. Then we have a promotion strategy, 2021 to 2026, and I think it's important that I note that this is an initial interim report, as it's very difficult because one purpose of the strategy is that we set a target for ourselves of how many people we can increase that speak Welsh on the island, and in the report we put 325 as a figure, but that is an interim sum until we receive information from the next census in 2023. So what we would say is the strategy is a follow-up of the former strategy with the same priority areas, more or less. The first one is children and young people and the family. Then we have the second one is the workplace. And finally, then we have the community. We say there what the situation is at the moment and what we hope to achieve. And in order to facilitate that, we've also put at the end that there's an implementation plan for the first year. And that's it, really. Freya is here if you wish to ask any questions. And also, I think, as a forward, really, a big part or the beginning of the strategy is the statistics that set the Welsh language and set the background of where we are. And I think maybe one interesting point to note is that you'll see, and I think Hayden referred to this in the Welsh Language Forum, that even though as a percentage the number has gone down, well, yes, the percentage has gone down from, say, about 80% or more down to less than 60%, hasn't it? But the number of Welsh speakers, about 38,000, has stayed consistent since the 1950s. So I think it's important to note that. And then maybe, I'm not sure if there are any questions, I'm sure that's Freya and myself. And also I'd like to thank Freya for producing the report and taking over from Carol Wynn in post. Freya's been here now for about 6 months, sorry, 6 weeks. It's 3 months now, yes. Apologies. So that's what's in the report and the purpose of it, of course. It's a statutory requirement for us to produce this. And so what we ask is that you recommend to propose the document to the executive and for us to put them up on the website of the council, and then that they follow the political journey to the full council. Thank you very much. Well, now then, it's a pleasure to welcome Mrs. Freya Owen to the meeting. as the portfolio holder says she's coming in place of Mrs. Carol Wynne Owen, and Freyr is the policy and Welsh language manager here within the authority. So can I ask you, Freyr, to just give us a little bit of meat on the bone? No problem. Thank you very much, and thank you for the welcome and the opportunity to present the strategy here today. I'm not going to give you a detailed overview of the contents, but maybe just to summarize some of the main messages. So as Ian has already referred to, here's the second strategy. There's been some change in the format, but again, it is a strategy which builds on the priorities in the first strategy and set a target to increase the number of Welsh speakers, which is consistent with the original target. So the aim still is to turn the 2011 census figures around. And the main reason for this is that there is no comprehensive statistics which have been set since 2011. And I think that has been a challenge in preparing the strategy. So the document before you, it is a interim strategy to bridge the gap until the publication of the census data this year. And this will happen a little bit next year and then 2023 in full. And that information will then allow us to do further detailed work and recognise if the strategy continues to be suitable or do we need to work further on the document. And again, as Ian has already mentioned, there is a second appendix before you, which is an overview of what was achieved in the first assessment. And it's fair to note that the review work and the assessment work has been of assistance in forming the new strategy. And I'll also add that implementing the promotion strategy is partnership work, and it depends on close work with key partners, which are part of the Anglesey Welsh Language Forum, and the forum will take responsibility for monitoring developments, and we'll also report on completing the strategy against under confirmation with the Welsh language standards as well. And also note that there is consultation which has happened with the Welsh Language Forum, the senior management team and the Welsh Language promotion team internally, and then dependent on the for the recommendation, the intention as noted, and the full council before the end of the year. Thank you. Thank you for that. And as Freya noted, the Welsh Language Forum and chaired by Dr. Hayden Edwards, who is responsible for monitoring the implementation plan. So you've heard the presentations. Do we have anyone willing to ask a question? I'm going to begin with Councillor Margaret Roberts. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Freya. Are there risks you haven't talked about that cause you concern regarding the situation of the Welsh language on Anglesey? I hope I've been as comprehensive as possible in recognising the challenges we're aware of. I think it's fair to say that the biggest concern, possibly the most timely one, is the effect of the pandemic on the Welsh language. There are some things we know, and there's recognition of that in the report, things such as there's anecdotal doubt about the housing situation. I think it's fair to say as a result of the pandemic. So there are such concerns we do have a feeling about, but maybe we don't have the data and evidence that confirm exactly what the situation is at the moment. And where we've been able to refer to some things we're aware of, I think we need to be awake to this period could lead to further changes in some areas, so we need to prepare and be ready for that, and also be ready to adapt and change any plans in response to these challenges as we get to know more about them as well. Thank you. I did feel that the pandemic was the biggest thing that hit me, that there were risks linked to that have happened as a part of the pandemic, but it is a wider context as well, as you say. Thank you. Can I just come in on the back of that, please, Margaret, because you know what you see, I think, yourself and myself live in Benllech, And what we see is increasing influx of people. Yes, the pandemic has created the fact that we can work from home. So maybe we see not only people retiring to Anglesey now, but also people working from home as well from the area. And I think that the estate agents are saying at one time over the last year, the moment a house went up, it was sold. And that is a risk, but also one other risk. And I'm not sure how we respond to it, but we do have responses or objectives in the implementation plan is to transfer the Welsh language. I do see myself, members of family or friends of friends, maybe a couple getting married, and maybe the English language is firstly spoken in the homes. So we do have to have objectives in the strategy which tries to make sure that people see the benefit of speaking Welsh at home. So I think that is also a risk as well. Thank you. Councillor Ken-Hughes. Thank you, Chair. The main aim of the strategy is to increase the number of Welsh speakers on the island, which will contribute to the target of 1 million speakers by 2050. The report before us today, which is the 2016-2021, and the promotion strategy 2021-26 is in draft form. The main challenge of a draft is the lack of current data about the Welsh language situation in Anglesey. Our role is to scrutinise the strategy to try and come to a decision. Is it effective? Is it going to be successful or not? And provide comments. The same difficulty exists for us as the authors of the reports. Without the data, we can't come to any specific conclusions. Seeing in the report that a lot of work has been done, what is missing really is the direct effect of all that work that has been done. And to finish, for myself, without the necessary information, it's not a challenge to scrutinise, but it's impossible. Okay, thank you. Does anybody want to respond to that comment, Ian? I don't think it's impossible to scrutinise, no, or come to general findings. We are aware of what is going on and why it's happening. So we have created an implementation plan here. As I said, one of the risks, in my opinion, and we do have objectives to improve the situation. Yes, maybe it's a way of challenging or scrutinizing. Maybe we could ask, is there more we could do there, or are there things there you think won't be effective? So I do think there is a way of doing that, but without the information from the census, the only problem really is that it's difficult for us to set a target, but I don't think there's a perfect target. You know, what we want to do is to ensure that we don't see a deterioration in the Welsh language situation, that we see an improvement. And I do believe that the three priorities are education in our schools. We can influence there, definitely. The second priority area is the workplace. In Anglesey, we have the plan where we support the use of Welsh language in the workplace, in the council, and that is something we have an influence over. And the only thing that is difficult maybe is the third priority, which is the community. So I do think there is a way of scrutinising and asking questions and maybe receiving positive input to change things if you wish. Thank you. Of course, as you've said, we have to wait until 2023 to receive all of the data and all the information, but there is reference, isn't there, in the report that the annual review of the population, the national review Wales, and the use of Welsh language suggests that there is room to feel a little bit more positive. So that's something to be quite glad of. Councillor David Roberts? Yes, thank you. Thank you for the report. There's lots of information included. One of the things I was looking at was priority area 2, because from what I understand, the promotion strategy on Anglesey in its entirety, not just within the council. So the activities in the implementation plan are almost the only ones that deal with. The second one is what things we do within the council. I've worked in the public sector previously, and I've got a great interest in what's happening in the private sector as well. So is there an intention to take steps to try and be of assistance to the private sector to encourage people? There are lots of wishes there, but as someone said, hope isn't a strategy, is it? You have to have something concrete in place to make sure things do happen. So is there a hope of some kind of strategy including the private sector as well? Freya, do you want to come in there? Yes, I think it's fair to say that the implementation plan is a working document, and there's definitely scope to be adding to it as areas of importance come up during the year, and opportunities are also recognised to collaborate. There's strong emphasis within the Welsh Language Forum on collaboration and recognising opportunities for working together, and I see as things develop, more aims will be added, and I accept what you're saying, that we have a responsibility, I would argue, to be using our position and our influence as a county council to be an example and to lead the way where we can and support and advise where we can, and other workplaces as well to follow our example as a bilingual employer which sets the precedent with a bilingual workplaces. So that's what I would say. There is definitely scope for us to be adding that across the year. Thank you very much. Councillor Vaughan Hughes. Thank you, Chair. Ian said as the beginning that there was more or less the same number of Welsh speakers in Anglesey today as there were in 1950. It's true even to say that there are more Welsh speakers in Wales today than there were in Owain Glyndwr's days. But of course, the population of Wales was very small at that time. And the big difference is that everybody used to speak Welsh in Owain Glyndwr's time. 80% used to speak Welsh on the island in 1950. That's not the situation today. And there are people who study language who tell us that you have to get a critical mass for a language within a community. And once that less than 70% of members of society speak Welsh, once that percentage drops below 70%, you will then see a linguistic shift. And as the numbers of Welsh language speakers on the island, as they are throughout Wales, are much lower than 70%, it's very difficult to see what strategy can turn that around. You said, Chair, that there was a light of hope. Yes, there is hope always, of course, but we mustn't not blind ourselves to the fact that this critical mass there's, as a community language I'm talking about now, people are still speak Welsh for a long time. The Welsh language won't die, but will it live as a community language? That is our big concern. Thank you. Thank you. Can I come back on that in response? I think Vaughan is correct. There is a truth in what he says, but to give a little bit more of an optimistic picture, not in Anglesey maybe, but in South Wales, I've been speaking to a number of people lately where the use of the Welsh language is on the increase. There are findings that education is better in Welsh language schools in South Wales, and non-Welsh speaking parents are sending their children there for all types of reasons, because they lost the language and want their children to learn Welsh. There was a report in the Daily Post about 2 weeks ago with flooding regarding the draining system in Bellach that was put sewage into the sea. And I had a phone call in the afternoon from someone from Welsh Water to explain to me why that was. And they spoke in Welsh and everything, and I said, "Oh, your Welsh language is very good. Oh, thank you very much." I was brought up on an English home, they said, and I went to a Welsh school, and myself and my brother-in-law are the same, have been brought up on English households, but have learned Welsh in school, and our children, we speak Welsh with them at home. So I do think there is a way for us to turn things around, even though, as Vaughan said, it's going to be a challenge. But when we get under that 70, yes, we do see big changes, even here at Anglesey. And I've said, you've heard me say before, I left Anglesey at 5 years old, not being able to speak English, to a totally Welsh school, Ysgol Bod Hyfryd in Wrexham, and everyone spoke English on the yard and only Welsh in the class. Came back to Amlwch, 12 years old, and education, I received bilingual education and chose studying geography and history through the medium of Welsh and everything else in English. But in Anglesey in the 70s, the late 70s, the language on the yard was, I would say, most spoke Welsh, and that has changed today. I think if we went to Amlwch School today and listened how much Welsh is spoken on the yard, I think the situation might be different, and that's why the strategy is so important. Thank you, Chair. Do you want to come back on that one?
Yeah.
No. No, I'm grateful for everything that's been done and being a member of this authority, Anglesey County Council, and seeing the emphasis, the positive emphasis that's being put on the Welsh language has, it's very good to see, and I'm seriously taking my hats off to Anglesey County Council for all the good work that they've done and that they continue to do so. But as Ian says, another matter is the school playground, and that's what does concern someone. Thank you. Thank you very much for your contribution, Councillor Alan Roberts. Okay, thank you. Ian has taken me back to a time that I'd forgotten, even in Amlwch School at the time. I was going to follow up. The challenge I do feel is the community element. I'm a governor on a school where the Welsh language is not very often spoken in the home, but there's good work happening in our schools where the Welsh language is transferred very successfully. But when you speak to pupils when they've reached the sixth form, it's unbelievable the work that is done. But the head teacher always says, Alan, one weakness that exists is not the schoolyard, because they're trying to tackle that, but the opportunities outside the school, that there are activities available in Welsh in our communities where the Welsh language isn't strong. We must think about the type of activities to be held through the Welsh language, even though maybe activities that exist already, that are run by, to turn them into Welsh language activities, then the children and parents will see more value in having the Welsh language. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll go on therefore to Councillor Robert Llewellyn-Jones. Thank you, Chair. I'm reading a book at the moment, The History of Howell Hughes. I'm not sure if you remember the surgeon in Liverpool, Howard Hughes. And he was saying the story when he was brought up in Anglesey. He only spoke Welsh, and his parents took him to Liverpool. And anyway, in the classroom, the teacher asked the question and told him to, and he answered in Welsh, and all the children laughed at him because he didn't understand English at all and had been brought up in Anglesey. But he did very well and was a very successful surgeon in the hospital in Liverpool. But as the councillors have already said, this is going to be a challenge, a very difficult challenge, for the reason, as we say, children now learn Welsh in the classroom, but when they go out to play, English is spoken very frequently on the yard, and that's the problem. Children like you think in Welsh. When you dream, you think in Welsh. When I dream, I think in English. There is a difference between people, and it'll be the same with the young children. They will think in English, most of them. There's not many, as Vaughan said on this. But the fact is that we haven't worked with the houses we've done around the island either. In Holyhead, it's going down. But their choice is to speak in English. Unfortunately now, I know I harp on about this, but there are 250 houses that need to be built in Holyhead, and most of those, or 95% of those, will be English households coming into the centre of the Holyhead. We have to decide, do we want to keep the Welsh language, or do we want economic strategy, as officers tell me? Or we need the economic strategy, we need work. And that's always what's said. We have to choose if we want to work and want more people to come in to live here in Anglesey. There's not much future for the Welsh language as I see it. But these are old figures that are noted here in the 10 years that have gone past since 2011. And I'm totally sure that these will be much worse than are noted here. But as I said, learning Welsh as we did in school, as we learned Latin in school, we didn't use it anywhere after, but that isn't a good way of learning, and Welsh needs to be spoken in the homes. It is an academic subject at times now, and we have to try and get some way of getting the children to think in Welsh and not in English. But it's going to be a very big challenge for everyone involved to try and achieve that. Because you got the television influence. I was watching Pawb by Farn last night. A young girl there speaking in Welsh. She was going to the school in Llangefni, but she thinks in Welsh, I'm sure. She's been brought up in Welsh with her mum and father. Neville, who used to work with us, who is her grandfather. But I'm not sure what we can do, to be honest. But we must do something. We don't have to note how we're trying to make our schools more Welsh. Are there lessons to be learned from other countries? What they are doing? Is there anything that we can learn from other countries at all to see the way they are trying to do things and making a difference to keep their languages going? Because English is a strong language all over the world and is having so much people in America and so on and around the world, like Esperanto, really, isn't it? But we have to give this a lot of attention now, or before long. If you look at the figures next, it'll be the year after next, won't it? That we get the figures of the census to see what's happened. Just a comments from me like that. Thank you very much, Councillor Llewellyn-Jones. You referred there, you talked about the young girl that took part in Pawb by Farn last night, and she spoke exceptionally well, and her father spoke English, and her Welsh was very good last night, I would say. And you were talking about the houses that have gone up in Holyhead, in the Llangollen area. Well, should we put it like this? Those children, I would think, would go to the new Cubby school, won't they? And that primary school has to be praised because the Welsh language policy is implemented very well there. The head teacher and all the staff there need to be praised. And the challenge for yourself, Councillor Bob Llewellyn-Jones, is you're a governor at Ysgol Uwchradd Caergybi. Do you ensure that there's a Welsh language provision for the teachers in the school? And I'll leave that challenge for you. Councillor Treball-Hughes. Thank you, Chair. What you were saying about Ysgol Cubby was totally correct. The school is on the way up and still on the way up. The secondary school, I remember myself being appointed as the chair of the secondary school governors, and there were two councillors there, two councillors who were very famous quite a few years ago, and came up to me and said, what are you going to do about the Welsh language? Are we having everything in Welsh? They said, and I had to turn around and say, I'm not coming here to talk politics. And from then on, I've noticed a lot of things that are going on in the town. But if you look at page 52, where it's talked about the highest number of Welsh speakers and the lowest number of Welsh speakers, look where they come from and where the biggest problem is in the town in Holyhead. No disrespect, but those are the figures that you've given. Is Morswyn School and Budedden Secondary School, and I do say they are, I'm just asking you now, have they made a difference, significant difference since they've been opened? I'm not sure what the answer to that is. Thank you. If I can answer you to begin with, Councillor Treball-Hughes, if you remember, since 1977, there have been hundreds, and I mean hundreds, of children from the Ynys Cybbi that have been taken daily to Ysgol Uwchradd Budedden, and they've had bilingual education there. So the Welsh language, I would say there's more Welsh in Holyhead now than has been for years, but Mr. Rhys Hughes is here, and I'm sure he can give a better answer than I can. Good afternoon, everyone. Realise that I'm find it difficult sitting here saying nothing with schools being discussed. I think what's important to note is similar to Councillor Alan Roberts' comments earlier, that it's a challenge for everyone, that it's a challenge for schools, as noted. We must, not all children on the schoolyard speak English. There are children who do speak Welsh on the yard here in Anglesey, and promoting the Welsh language is a priority at every school in Anglesey. We've heard of one specific catchment area, and excellent work has been done there in the last 2 years, but good work is happening across Anglesey. It is a challenge. It was a challenge when I was a head teacher and going back about 15 years or more to encourage children and young people to use the Welsh language outside the classroom. A number of strategies are in existence at the moment in collaboration with different agencies. From Councillor Robert Llewellyn was talking about what's happening in other countries. Owen Davis, who is here with us today, is working with Bangor University, and they are looking at how different languages are treated in different countries, and this research feeds into what we are doing. And of course, the strategy in relation to the promotion of the Welsh language and the Welsh language charter across North Wales to encourage the use of Welsh language on the yard and also outside. But it comes down to the attitude and the wishes, I think. And another thing that was noted in the education panel recently by Councillor Vaughan Hughes, and it's not just schools are responsible for this. The schools have a core role in this, but schools can sort this out by themselves, and that's why this is a role for everyone. And I hope you see that it all fits together. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else who wants to contribute to the conversation at all? Anyone? I can't see anybody's hand up. Before I go to the Welsh language and education strategy, I'll go through the recommendations first of all then. The committee are asked to recommend to the executive the publication of the following on the corporate website. 1, the Welsh Language Strategy 2016 to 2021, the assessment report, and the scrutiny committee is requested to recommend to the executive the approval of the Welsh Language Promotion Strategy 2021-6 and authorise the relevant officers in consultation with the portfolio holder to undertake any further revision of the draft strategy. Anyone willing to propose that, please? Councillor Vaughan Hughes, and seconded by Councillor David Roberts, and I'm sure we all are of the same opinion. Thank you very much, and thank you to Ieuan and to Freya also. Okay, we'll go.
So we'll go on to the Welsh in Education Strategic Plan. Does Meirion want to say a few words before we look at the report? Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I take this opportunity to thank the Education Department for the report and for the strategy, and Owen Davis in particular, who's the author of the report. I have pleasure in presenting the Welsh in Education Strategic Plan for 2022 to 2032. It's called the WESP. Recently, we've been hearing about COP26 and a number of promises being made there covering a period of 10 years or whatever. We're doing the same here, really. We're providing a strategic plan to be implemented over the next 10 years. And as part of the events in Glasgow, we've heard people protesting. And there is a place for protest, and I admire Greta Thunberg and her followers for their comments about blah, blah, blah. And perhaps there are 3 fingers pointing towards me, just as there might be a finger pointing at other people. But this strategy is a statutory requirement under Section 84 of the regulations. The purpose of these regulations is to improve opportunities for local authorities to plan the Welsh language provision to achieve expectation in terms of the growth of Welsh language now and in the future. And it goes on to talk about 1 million Welsh speakers by 2050, halfway through this century. The point I'd like to make is that we should be hopeful. I know we face significant challenges, but by using this strategy, we can improve the situation. And so I hope that you will accept the strategy and that everybody will implement the promises contained in it. I was talking to Rhys Hughes yesterday. I'm sure he didn't expect me to speak for so long today, but I am going to hand over to Rhys now so that he can give you his presentation, and then of course we'll allow the members to ask questions. So we live in hope, Chair. Fair enough, and I agree with that. So can I welcome Mr. Rhys Hughes, the Director of Education. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you to the portfolio holder, and thank you for the support along this journey. As has been noted already, this is a very important document for us in Anglesey. And as Freya mentioned earlier, and I would like to steal all of Freya's words because she said this much better than I can, but what she said is relevant to the WESP as well. It is a statutory requirement, and we have to have a 10-year plan. This is the first time I've written a 10-year plan in my career, and the purpose is noted in the report, and there's also a summary in section 4, which I hope is useful as well. The format of the WESP has been set by the Welsh Government, and we have to follow that format and to use it to present the plan. As Freya noted earlier, collaboration with stakeholders is very important. We've heard about the language forum, and it's relevant to this plan as well. So working with stakeholders has been crucial to reach this point. In the meetings that Owen has with the Welsh Government have said that they are surprised at how much collaboration has taken place. You know, the stakeholders, they contribute to improving the situation and have contributed towards this plan. There will be a consultation period of 8 weeks now with all consultees, including Estyn and schools and so on, and then we'll be collecting the comments and adapting the plan if required. Then the final WESP has to be submitted to the Welsh Government at the end of January, and Owen has noted that we do have discussions with the Welsh Government to update them and so on. I realise that the document includes a lot of information, but as I said, it is a very important document, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And Owen is here, and he knows much more about it than I do. Thank you. Does Mr. Owen Davies want to say something? No, thank you, Chair. I'm very happy to answer any questions. Okay, you've heard what the Director of Education had to say. So does anybody have any questions or comments? Councillor Margaret Smurley-Roberts. Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the report. I must say, it took me a weekend to go through this report and plan. So it's a strategic plan covering 10 years. We know it's a statutory document. How easy will it be to adapt it? Is it set in stone? That's one thing I'd like to know, because things change. The pandemic has shown us that things can change quickly. So how easy will it be to adapt the plan over the 10 years? Thank you for that question. We will be putting a structure in place, and as you can see on the last page, we have an accountability and collaboration structure. So one thing I want to keep for the next 10 years is that a joint working element. Of course, the objectives will be changed in accordance with data, but every year the terms of reference group will meet every term. The outcomes group will be meeting. And remember, it's not just colleagues from schools who are part of those, but every outcome includes a very extensive representation across different sectors and other stakeholders. So it will be essential for us to respond to every outcome on an annual basis, and an annual report will be formulated following those discussions. I'll stop there. Do you want more information, Councillor Roberts? No, I was just thinking we have the Anglesey and Gwynedd strategy, for example, which isn't easy to change. I don't want us to face the same situation with this plan. We need to be able to respond to things as they happen. One strategy for the Welsh language isn't going to work. We have to adapt and change and to look at what happens as we move forward.
Please.
Please. The exact point that you have raised has been raised by us with the Welsh Government. When we were discussing a plan for 10 years. And of course, the Welsh Government has acknowledged the same points that you have raised in terms of the needs to have set times to adapt and to review. But this is a vision. It's a 10-year vision, that's the requirement, and we have responded to that. And if we're still doing the same thing in 10 years, well, something is wrong. As you know, education is going to be changing, and we have to do what's suitable for children and young people now and in the future. Thank you. Councillor Alan Roberts. Having read the document, something sprung to mind last night when I was in a governor's meeting drawing a short list for a teaching job. One of the challenges that face us, especially in the secondary sector, is safeguarding. That we have teachers, assistants and so on who can teach through the medium of Welsh. I'm fully aware that there's a big challenge here, especially in a number of areas in the secondary sector. So how are we working with our universities and other organisations to ensure not only that we will have teachers, but that we have teachers, high quality teachers in future? If I could come in first, please, just to note that before coming to Anglesey, Owen worked in the education department in the university. He was working with prospective teachers, and that link between us and Bangor University has strengthened since then. You also have CAP and the partnership across North Wales, which looks after prospective teachers. and new teachers, and we do have these sorts of discussions with them, and we do work with them to try to encourage people to come into the profession, which is a very important thing, and then to ensure that we have the tools in the toolbox so that these individuals are effective practitioners to provide the best possible education to children. Owen can give you further information. I think it's true to say that the relationship between CAPAN and the organisations that provide initial training for teachers, it has never been as close as it is now. Already, we have put leaders from university in touch with the secondary strategic groups. So this is discussed at a strategic level. So head teachers will have access to the cohorts that are training at the moment in CAPAN and other organisations. So they won't have to wait for opportunities to crop up randomly, but that we create a more strategic relationship with teacher training organisations to help with recruitment. Professional learning never finishes, and we work with the teachers we have in our system. In Outcome SEM, you'll see that we work very closely with other organisations such as GWE, Canolfan Bedwyr, and the Education Department, for example, so that we have a hierarchy of opportunities for every teacher, either to improve their language skills, raise awareness about the Welsh language, or to learn the Welsh language. And of course, we'll be taking advantage of the teaching workforce census, which takes place every year. And we'll also be having a strategic meeting to discuss those outcomes, and we'll be targeting schools who have said that they have staff who need more support with the Welsh language, and universities, GWE and the Language Charter will be providing a more holistic service to help them to progress, depending where they are on that spectrum. I can see that Councillor Alan Roberts was expressing a hope that there would be an increase in the number of staff able to teach through the medium of Welsh. Well, that's one of the 7 outcomes, isn't it? It's very important. Councillor Vaughan Hughes. Thank you, Chair. In 34.8% of secondary schools on Anglesey, the Welsh language is the main medium of teaching. Are we happy with that percentage? I'm not. Can I come in first, Owen? I think the aim with everything here on Anglesey is to improve. And the day when I sit here saying that I'm happy to everything concerning education in Anglesey is the day we stop thinking about how to improve. 34.8%. We need to increase, we need to continue to increase, and the West will be crucial to help us to do that. But we do have plans to continue to increase that figure. And that's what we'll be trying to do. Owen, yes, of course, I agree with the comments, and I share the wish to increase that percentage and to work very closely with the secondary sector in a holistic way with stakeholders such as GWE to ensure that that percentage does increase significantly over the next few years. Do you want to come back, Vaughan? No, thank you. we do need to provide some context to this speaking. We do need to look at these things, and certainly 34.8% doesn't please me. And I, like you, want to see that figure increasing. It is a very disappointing figure on Anglesey, 34.8%. Thank you. May I come in, Chair? I'm talking now as a governor for one of the largest secondary schools on the island. You know, very big steps have been taken over the last few years in terms of Welsh language provision within the school. The change is amazing. The percentage might be a bit misleading. It doesn't really describe what's happening in all secondary schools on the island. There are clear differences, but very big steps are certainly taking place in at least one school, if not more, of our secondary schools. Thank you. Councillor Miriam Jones. I'd just like to say that I acknowledge Vaughan's point and I'm not arguing with his point. But the data that I'm looking at here, can I just give you one fact? The percentage of Welsh language speakers at the end of KS4 who gain a status C in Welsh First Language is 77.7%. Okay, I'm not arguing with Vaughan's point, and I'm disappointed with that figure as well. But there are successes as well, even now. Thank you. Margaret? Yes, just to add to what Vaughan and Alan were saying, could Rhys or Owen tell us what the main challenges are in future in terms of the Welsh language for us here on Anglesey? That's a difficult question. It's a good question as well. I can only tell you what my opinion is. Certainly, Freya talked earlier about the demographics and the fact that we face new challenges. Obviously, as we've discussed more than once in the school improvements panel, COVID has affected the confidence of some of our pupils in both languages, really, not just the Welsh language. So schools are facing a bigger challenge. If we think about the fact that it's one team, the journey starts at home before these children go to school. And then certainly during the foundation phase and the journey through the school until they leave after doing their GCSEs and their A-levels and beyond. So it's important that we get the specific steps in place. But there's a challenge in terms of attitudes outside school. And it appears to be more difficult to get people to realise how important it is to be bilingual, or even to speak more than 2 languages. And more young children seem to be reaching our schools with less skills in the Welsh language. So to reach the aim that Councillor Vaughan Hughes was talking about, it's easy enough for me to sit here and say we want to increase that percentage. It is a real challenge to increase that figure, but we are willing to face that challenge, and that's the intention of the West. I don't know if Owen wants to add anything. Yes, just to echo those words, and also the challenge of the new curriculum, which will be presented over the next few years. We won't have key stages, we'll have learning phases. We need to ensure that whatever we have that is good and working now isn't lost as a result of the new curriculum, but that we work with GWER, schools and other stakeholders to ensure that we are in a firm position and that we improve what we have on Anglesey. You're talking about the new curriculum, and we know how important progression from the primary to the secondary sector is. But what about progression from secondary to higher education? One of the other stakeholders that are involved with the WES and the subgroups is Llandrillo Menai College, and they're very important stakeholders. So we are working with them because they're on the subgroup and on the language forum. So we are trying to ensure that there is progression from primary to secondary to post-16, and then on to the local economy and the careers that we want to see them flourishing in. So working with stakeholders and of course with Careers Wales, because they are also noted as an important stakeholder in the West, and the outcome for in terms of Welsh medium qualifications. But there isn't an outcome for what you mentioned there. But because we work with these stakeholders on the subgroups, we are working with them to achieve that aim. Does Mr. Hughes want to come in on that point? Something else that strengthens that element is the Anglesey and Gwynedd post-16 partnership, which means that there is already a very strong collaboration between schools and the college, which will help with what Owen was discussing. David Roberts, it's a comment really. I have two sons and they studied STEM subjects in school and went on to university to study STEM, and they chose to do their A-levels in English, which was a bit of a shock. But they did have an eye on the next step for them. And when they went to university, they weren't offered a chance to study those STEM subjects in Welsh. So is there anything we can do in the interface between secondary schools and universities? Because in truth, if you've had your education in Welsh, you can transition to English quite easily. You know, how can we change the way of thinking? You know, if we're going to do our university courses in English, why should we study A-levels in Welsh? If they're going on to do teaching courses, of course, they can do them in Welsh. But when you're talking about more specialist STEM subjects, I'm sure we could work closer with a colleague, Cymraeg Cenedlaethol am Bangor University, to try to convey these messages. Of course, we do have a good relationship with eSchools, which is the platform that provides subjects that are missing in some schools. So we use those to provide Welsh medium lessons to other schools in the region. So that is also an important, a strong element in the West. So that is increasing as well. So we're a partner that contributes beyond Anglesey in terms of teaching through the medium of Welsh. I just wanted to note that as well. Thank you. The last contributor will be Councillor Ken Hughes. Thank you, Chair. According to the questions and answers that we've had, I think that this document is much easier to scrutinise than the two previous documents. And what's encouraging for me as well is that this is a living document and that you can respond and to make changes if required. And what makes it easier is that you have the data and the information to do that. And that's the difference between this and the two other documents. Thank you. Yes, that's a fair comment. So before I come to the recommendations, does Mrs. Morgan want to say a short word? Yes, thank you. It's an extremely important discussion. Yes, good work is taking place, and certainly there is a vision. But what's crucially important over the next 5 to 10 years is that we receive high-level support from elected members, but that we have robust challenge as well. In terms of national policies, I'm old enough to remember them changing the qualifications or thresholds needed to become a teacher. That was during Leighton Andrews' days. I don't know how many of you remember him, but we must face reality. When you ask how many students throughout Wales study Welsh first language at A level and who study Welsh in universities, either we have to look at the policies, secondly, we have to look at the pathways for people to become teachers. It's happening in the care sector. You know, people who have been home carers can get access to nursing. We have to be careful that we aren't overly academic. We need to go back to the government and ask them to have another look at the policies and to look at the access pathway for people who want to be teachers. At the moment, the doors might be closed firmly in their faces. And to answer Vaughan Hughes, there's certainly room for improvement. So there's a lot of hard work in front of us, building on the teamwork that's being done. But we need to provide high-level support and challenge moving forward. Thank you. It's been a really good discussion, and we wish the best for this 10-year plan. So before I bring the discussion to an end, does anybody else want to come in? Okay, we'll go on to the recommendations. The committee is asked to recommend to the Executive Committee the approval of the Welsh in Education Strategic Plan 2022-23, definition of the role of catchment language coordinators, and authorisation of the relevant officers in consultation with the portfolio holder to complete any further reviews of the draft strategy. So, who's going to propose those recommendations? Thank you, Councillor Ken Hughes. Who's going to second? I'm happy to second, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Margaret Roberts. I'm sure we're all unanimous. Thank you. Thank you to Mr Rhys Hughes and Mr Owen Davies and Councillor Marion Jones. As I said, we needed to discuss education, but also the review of the local development plan. Okay, so I welcome now Mr Dewi Francis Jones and Miss Becca Jones, Mr Christian Branch, and also Councillor Richard Dew. Is Richard here? Yes, I am. Good afternoon. Can I ask Councillor Richard Dew to introduce or present the item? As everybody knows, in 2017, the joint local development plan for Anglesey and Gwynedd was adopted. It has to be reviewed every 4 years. So we've reached that point now in 2021. So what you have today is the review report, which will be going out to consultation now. And this is the beginning of the journey of looking at this plan. So with those few words, I'll hand over to Christian Branch. Does he want to say a few words before Rebecca Jones gives her presentation? Is Mr. Branch here? Yes, I am. Yes, just a few words. The current development plan provides a local policy structure for land use. It has an effect on policies for land use, housing and so on. The current plan is in place until 2025, but it needs to be reviewed 4 years after its adoption. Today, the committee can challenge the plan and the review, its nature and its timetable. The consultation process has begun and the final report will be reported to the full council in March 2022. Becca Jones, the planning policy officer, is here to give an overview of the process, and Dewi Francis Jones, the chief planning officer, is here if there are any questions about the planning process. Can I welcome Mrs. Becca Jones? Thank you, Chair. I'll just go quickly through the report that Richard Dew and Christine Brands have referred to. We have to write this report that looks back at the performance of the plan and to look at changes in context since it was adopted. I won't go over that, but I'll just outline the content of the report because I think that will be useful. The report has been split into 6 sections. You can see that in the covering report. And the first part sets out the background, the evidence base that will be essential to the process of preparing a revised plan. It's also important to note that this report doesn't set out any changes to the plan. It just notes the evidence that we will need to gather to address which changes are required to the plan. So that is part 1, which sets out the context of what a review report is. Then part 2 sets out the main legislative and policy changes at a national and local level, such as the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, the National Plan. There have been updates in government's guidance. For example, TAN 15 comes into force in December. We'll have to consider those issues. We've also talked about COVID and Brexit. And once again, we will have to consider those issues as we look at preparing a revised plan. Part 2 also details on other issues that might have an effect, such as climate change, which is an important matter. The things that come out of the census. There are a lot of other things as well, not just national strategies that will have to be considered as we move on to prepare a revised plan. The main findings of the annual monitoring reports are also set out in part 2 of the review report. Part 3 looks at the current plan. It looks back at the performance of the JLDP and looks at where new evidence shows that we need to have another look at the policies. So part 3 looks at every part of the current plan to look at its performance and to consider if changes are required, but it doesn't give details about the changes. Part 4 looks at the evidence base. Every local development plan is based on a sound evidence base. So we have to ensure that the evidence base is updated, and perhaps we'll need to do further work on new matters. Of course, new matters can come up whilst we're undertaking the process, and we have to bear that in mind. So that is part 4, the evidence base that we'll have to collect. Part 5 sets out consideration given to collaboration to prepare a joint development plan. We have to do this according to government guidelines. There is a joint working agreement in place to provide a joint local development plan, and we do work closely with neighbouring planning authorities such as Snowdonia National Park. Part 6 sets out the conclusions of the review report and sets out the form of the review. I've gone through it quickly today, but the evidence set out in the report includes significant changes that I've already referred to, and these effects mean that we need to relook at the policies as a whole, and so the evidence underlines the need for us to undertake a full form review of the plan, which is to prepare a revised plan. The next steps have been set out in the covering report, and as Christian said, the public consultation has started on the review report, and it runs until the 20th of December, and it will be presented to the full council in the new year. So today we ask you to consider the draft review report, and just to give specific consideration to changes that have been included in the report in terms of the national local context and the findings of the annual monitoring report, and also matters that have been outlined that we need to consider as we prepare a revised plan, and also the conclusions in part 6 of the review report. Thank you. Thank you. You said a lot in very few words there. So you've referred to a number of things there. Are there any matters that haven't been included here that you feel need to be addressed, be they on a national, regional or local level? One of the things that concerns me as the service manager is the work doing on the strategic development plans on a regional level. You know, the strategic development plans have to be prepared, and obviously resources will have to be provided by council to do that work, be it money or staff. That will mean that additional work will have to be done to prepare a strategic development plan as well. I think it has been noted in the report, but we don't have enough information in terms of exactly what it means and what will happen. So that concerns me in terms of the time frame and how much work it will involve. We discussed this earlier today. You know, we've talked about these things that you can't anticipate. Changes in national legislation can happen, and we have to consider those moving forward. We've discussed holiday accommodation and holiday homes and people buying second homes. And I think that's something else where the government is undertaking work at the moment. And whatever they decide to do will be something else we'll have to take into consideration moving forward. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? Councillor David Roberts. Yes. Do you have an idea, if you are undertaking a full review, how long will that take? Once the delivery agreement is in place, which is the project management documents, that's how the government refers to it. And what the delivery agreement does is to set out the time frame and how, what and where we will be consulting, because there are statutory steps that we have to take to prepare a local development plan. Once that agreement is in place and agreed with Welsh Government, the timetable that the government sets out in their guidebook is 3.5 years after they have agreed the delivery agreement. It appears to be a very long period of time, and in the end, you know, we need changes now. Does it have to be like a monolith? There's a list of policies, and until the new plan is accepted, we'll have to live with the policies we have. So say you review a specific policy, can you implement that before reviewing the others? Or do you have to adopt the new policy in full? Can you do it in stages? As an amendment in a way. Unfortunately, no, because the policies integrate with each other. So that's why the conclusion is that we will have a full form review. Because there have been so many changes, it means that we have to look at the strategy behind the plan, and the strategy touches on everything within the local development plan. So unfortunately, we can't change individual policies in turn. I understand that there is frustration about the timescale of 3.5 years, but because the rules set out the procedure and to ensure that the public, members and other organisations can be part of the process, that is the time it takes to prepare a new plan and to gather all the evidence, of course, to be able to give us information to know how to change the policies for the benefit of both councils. Thank you. Does Christine Branch want to come in? Did you have your hand up? Yes, thank you. Just to note and to echo Becca's comments, we are aware that there are frustrations in terms of the timeframe. Another council within North Wales has challenged the government on the 3.5 years, but that is the expectation, that is the statutory process. So we're trying to work within the national guidelines. Thank you. Councillor Vaughan Hughes. Yes, thank you, Chair. Christian has just answered the exact question I was going to ask. So thank you for that, Christian. Councillor Bob Llewellyn-Jones. Thank you, Chair. Yes, the people of Anglesey expect to hear what the council will be doing about what's happening in Glasgow at the moment. And the document I have in front of me, well, it isn't good enough, to be honest. There's nothing in it to show that there is a procedure for responding to the questions being asked by every council in the country. I think people are sleeping. There's nothing waking them up. You know, we have to change the whole plan now. It was written about 4 years ago, and things were okay 4 years ago. I knew that this was going to come up, but nobody listened at the time. But there's nothing in this document now. You say you're going to spend about 6 weeks consulting on it. We want something today. We don't want to wait for a chance to discuss this. As a council, we have to respond to the people of Anglesey. We spent an hour and a quarter now discussing the Welsh language, but I'm sure this will be approved in about 10 minutes. But this is the most important thing we have as a council, and we have to make sure that we do answer the big questions that are being asked. The answers I get from the officers is, well, we have to do something to ensure more jobs, but there's plenty of jobs to be had in the renewable energy sector. I'm not very happy to what's in front of me today. There's nothing there that shows me that we've learned lessons about the way forward, and we should put this in the bin and start again. Thank you very much. Can I bring Mr. Dewi Francis Jones in?
Diolch yn fawr.
Yes, thank you very much. I just want to get a word in before Becca. I'd like to just point out that we just need clarity regarding what we're dealing with today. This is just the beginning of the process. It's not the plan that has been amended. What we have here, we're looking back, looked at how the plan has performed, and we've recognised matters that we believe will need to be looked at moving forward. And of course, there will be more of these issues coming to light as we go on that journey. So those matters that you referred to will certainly be dealt with as part of the process of reviewing the JLDP. But I just want to be clear, this is not the plan. This is just the beginning of the journey. Thank you very much. Becca, do you want to come back in? Yes, I just want to go on, but it's just important that you do express your views when we do go out to consult on the plan, when we're starting the work on the revised plan, and so that you do tell us your views. I understand that your frustration that we can't change things this second, but it's important that you are part of those steps going forward. Thank you. Councillor Alan Roberts. Yes, I wasn't going to discuss this, but can I just talk about the timeline and timescale? After reading the documents, I'm going against what I've heard by some councils. There are so many issues here that need to be addressed. They need to be looked at in detail. We don't know where we stand with a lot of these. Brexit, for example, Holyhead ports, will there be, for example? I could go on and on. If we rush here, then we could do more damage. We have to safeguard things and make sure that we do our homework thoroughly, that we do create a policy when the next one does come out that will reflect the island, Anglesey, that will exist then, but also the expectations of the people of Anglesey. They want to see the planning department and planning policies that are fair and that provide equal opportunities to anyone putting in an application on the island. Not something to rush into. It's not something to rush into. I understand the frustration, but at the end of the day, I want to see a policy that are clear and fair and thorough, and this is what the people of Anglesey deserve. I wanted to look at the CJC. I know we don't know exactly in what direction they're going. You refer to them, Becca. Are they looking at money? Are they taking you as officers? We don't know where we stand with these. And we don't know either if the CJCs, when they come into force, will they, what's your view regarding this? The only thing I can say is from the planning side of things. I'll maybe hand over to Christian with regard to the higher level issues. But obviously we have the National Development Framework, and then as I've referred to the strategic development plan that will need to be prepared. But obviously we do have another layer of developments plan, and that strategic things will be going into that as it is prepared. And the information that we collect going forward when we're creating the revised plan will feed into this as it is being prepared. But after that, once we do have a strategic plan in place, the local plans will sort of respond to the matters raised in the strategic level. What I can't answer your question is regarding the timeline of those being prepared and how they're going to look. The only thing I know is that they are going to follow the same pattern
as the local plan, it is the same process for both. But certainly, the resource is something that is of concern to me going forward. Maybe Chris can say a bit more, but we don't know much at the moment of how they are going to look or work, to be honest with you. Christian? Obviously, planning policy is one element. Financial well-being will be looked at regionally moving forward. As officers, I think there is like a clarity regarding what's being proposed. I know there are several options be under consideration, but we as officers have to ensure that the needs of Ynys Môn are recognised and that our priorities are recognised, and that is a planning framework in place that is transparent and resilient and meets the local needs. There will be change, but we are committed as officers to make sure that we do fight for Ynys Môn. So obviously there will be concerns regarding resources, regarding capacity, but that's something that will become clearer maybe over the next few months. Thank you very much. Alan? Yes, I'm glad that you've said what you've said. I share your concerns with regards to resources and finances. What I'm concerned about, naturally, of course, is that the democratic voice of local people is being lost here, and that the voice of Anglesey will be lost in this national body that nobody wants, really, something that's been forced upon us from Cardiff. That's the truth about it. Thank you. Councillor Richard Dew. Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to support what Councillor Aaron Roberts has just said. These TJCs with the strategic plan are coming in. We have a review of the JLDP. It just puts a huge strain on our own planning department as a county and also the Joint Committee. And they want us to do things regionally. I don't know where Welsh Government thinks we're going to how they think we're going to fund all this. We don't have enough staff. There's lack of planners out there, and they expect us to do everything. So just support the words of Alan Roberts. He's right. This is being forced upon us by Welsh Government. Thank you. Fair enough, fair enough. I was listening to Christian Branch there. He was talking about well-being and the economic side of things. Does Becca feel that the policies that are in place, are they resilient enough to keep local people in their local areas? I think that the JLDP at the moment ensures that we build homes for local people and for local needs. That's what the policies promote. And we have economic policies to promote other economic aspects of things, and they help with this. What I would say is it has already been referred to, but things have come to light during the pandemic to do with holiday homes and second homes, and work has been done through the JLDP. A report has been prepared and ways of potentially being able to deal with these issues, and work is ongoing and has been commissioned by Welsh Government with Dr. Simon Brooks as well. So even though we can't change the local plan at the moment, we can't quickly, we can't really do anything because the Welsh Government needs to change legislation to be able to get to grips with this issue. And we've done what we can as planning policy, a joint policy department. And work is ongoing at the moment by Welsh Government to look at the legislation. So I think the plan does provide for local people through ensuring that a right number of homes are built, and that we ensure that there is a local need for those homes. But I do accept that there are other things that needs to happen, but that's out of our hands. It's up to the government, and we work as close as we can with them to try and push things forward. And as we move forward, we're preparing the revised plan. Of course, whatever Welsh Government does with this matter, we can feed into this plan if there's something that we can do as local planners. Thank you. Does Christian want to come back? Yes, just quickly there, just wearing my economic development hat now. I think we have to recognise the status of the economic health of the island, and referring back to previous discussions regarding the Welsh language. I think without jobs, we won't have resilient communities, we won't have the Welsh language, there won't be opportunities. So it's a matter of aligning all those priorities to ensure that there is a policy framework in place to allow us to take up advantage of opportunities. And coming back at the needs of Ynys Môn, we need to ensure that the JLDP does recognise the sites that we have, the opportunities that are available, and things that we need to take advantage of on the island. So that's the challenge as the Economic Development Officer. Thank you. Mrs. Anwen Morgan. I've been listening to the discussion regarding the CJCs, as they're called. Work is ongoing in the background. It was on the agenda for the leaders of North Wales last week. I am going to ask for an update for the elected members. It has been mainly regarding moving the economic board for North Wales forward. And recognises that we need to look at planning and transport, but I will ask for an update, a high-level update for the elected members, just so that you are aware of where we're at. You know, what time is it at the moment regarding the CJCs? As somebody has said, they're with us now. We can't go back on that decision, but I think you deserve to know where we're at. Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Margaret Murley-Roberts. Yes, thank you, Chair. I think Alan Roberts has stolen my question regarding the CJCs, but never mind. He does have a tendency to do that, Margaret. I will adapt my question but it is similar. We're supposed to discuss the process today, but we do have to ask the questions nationally, regionally, locally. We're local. I think David said this is going to be a monolith. And it's us locally who know what our needs are. And if we are going to be ignored, and if they're going to try and do something that's one size fits all, it is not going to be successful at all. Planning, tourism, Welsh language, it's different to us in Môn than it is in Flint, for example. What's happening there won't work for us. So what happens in Oasis? Where are we on the totem pole at the moment? Are we right there down in the bottom? Have they taken any notice of us at all? And is there any point talking about it? Okay, who's going to respond to this question? Becca? I'll respond quickly. As the plans have been set out, you have the development framework that's nationally at the top, then the regional ones, and then obviously the local plan. But the point about the local plan for us is to ensure the local priorities. And if there is a strong framework for the whole area, then it's important. You know, you are the ones who know your area, and it's important that you're part of the process of developing the local plan. But the truth is, it does sit right at the bottom. The National Development Framework is strategic, as you can imagine, because it is for the whole of Wales. And I'm not sure how the regional one is going to look. But I think it is also going to be quite strategic. So there will be room for the JLDP and for it to set a framework for the local area. Thank you. Debbie Francis-Jones? I was going to put my hand down. Becca has made the same point as I was going to in answering that question. Thank you. Christian, do you want to come in? Yes, just quickly. just to ensure that the authority has a strong status regionally. And I think the commitment continues. We're going to continue to fight for Ynys Môn and to make sure that the needs are recognised and opportunities are recognised. So it is going to be a challenging period, but I think, again, there are strong characters and there is a commitment to ensure that the voice of Ynys Môn is heard. Thank you. Well, there we are. Before we bring this item to a close, would Councillor Jadot like to say a few words? No? Thank you. Just to remind everybody, this is just the beginning of the journey, as it has been said previously. It's going to take 3.5 years. So it is a long process, and it's important that everyone has their say when it will go out for consultation at the beginning of the year. This will be put in front of the County Council as well. Thank you. Thank you to each and every one of you who's contributed to the discussion. Okay, so the committee is requested to consider the report and give comments on its content with particular regard to changes in the national and local context. Is there any additional issue that should be included? The findings of annual monitoring report in part 2, the matters that will need to be reviewed in preparing a revised plan in part 3, and guidance on the conclusions in part 6 of the review report. Are you happy to accept this? Who's going to propose? Alan Roberts, there we are. And who's going to second? Vaughan Hughes, thank you. And I'm sure that we are all in agreement. Once again, thank you to the officers and to the Councillor Richard Dew as well. Thank you. I don't support it. Okay, thank you very much. Now then, we'll move on now to item number 6, which is the forward work plan. And I am going to ask Mrs. Anwen Davis to present this one. So it is the forward work plan of the committee. Thank you very much and good afternoon to you all. The next meeting is on the 18th of January 2022. And you'll see the document in front of you that there are 4 items programmed in for the agenda. Unless you'll see that there is the annual reports, there will be an annual report as well on the scrutinising work of this report and our corporate safeguarding programme. And then the standard item is just to look at the forward work programme of the committee. A date as well has been penciled in for the 8th of February. There's only one item to discuss the local assessment needs to do with social services. Social services will be Act 2014. Thank you, Chair. Does anybody have any questions on this item? Are you happy to accept? Proposer and seconder, please. Alan and Ken, thank you. We do also have items that are there for information. The public services bodies, governance arrangements for Gwynedd and Môn, and then an update on the sub-panels, as well as a progress report. I think they're there for information. Mrs. Morgan, would you like to say a quick word? Yes, just quickly, they're there for information. So just so that you know what the arrangements are with regards to the wellbeing assessments. We will be reviewing the work of the 4 areas. There's not much more to tell really, Gwilym. No problem, thank you. Does anybody have any comments? Is anybody happy to propose the report? Can I have a Vaughan? And who else? Who's seconding? Trevor Lloyd Hughes, thank you. I'm sure we're all in agreement. And then lastly, similarly, The North Wales Economic Reports, so the Q2 Progress Report for 2021-22, the Growth Deal Progress Report in accordance with the final deal agreement, the same sort of thing again. You've had an opportunity to read the reports. We do receive information weekly by now. The leader sends us copies, doesn't she, of the reports. Is anybody happy to propose this report? There we are, Ken. And who's seconding Ken? Councillor Vaughan Hughes, and I'm sure we all accept the report. Well, there we are. We've gone through the agenda quite quickly, 10 to 4. Can I thank you all for being present, and can I thank you for your contributions to the discussions. Thank you very much.